What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today, we're gonna be talking about how to theory craft and equip your units. So I see a lot of posts on the Epic 7 group me on Facebook, and a lot of people, like 50% of the posts, are like, how should I build this unit, y'all? Show me some units, like how do you build X unit, how do you build Y unit? And while that's really good and it's really good to have a community like that, it's very important to also understand how to do that yourself and kind of understand how people get to the point where you can use your units properly. And because a lot of the times you get advice that's not necessarily the best for you. Like it might be good for that unit, but it might not be good for you at the time. So it's important to make sure you know how to build your units, how to equip your units, and the things that you should be watching out for. So to kind of go through the process, we're going to look at some of my units and how I built them and the thought process that you should be doing with every single one. And they'll be from a variety of classes. They're going to be warrior class, they're going to be the healers, and they're going to be the other type. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's learn how to equip some units. So one of the hardest units to equip in this game, to be honest with y'all, and I still struggle with it. Mine is not the best at all, but you'll understand the process, but that's going to be Charles. So if y'all know, Charles is used everywhere, and he's kind of broke. He's pretty strong. And like this is my Charles, so pretty decent HP, pretty decent speed. So the first thing you need to ask yourself, you might be wondering, why the heck are you using this set instead of like counter set, which is what a lot of people use. And that partially it's what I have. It's this set got me better stats than the counter set. And even though the counter set is really strong, this set has been working for me fabulously. So the first thing I thought about was, okay, what do I want my Charles to do? And when I was looking at him, I was like, okay, he can counter attack. And I was like, okay, he's a knight. So do I want him to be defensive? And I said, no. I said, I want him to be able to attack and counter attack. So you see that, and I'm like, okay, knights have access to Elder Sword. So that's how I choose the artifact. I usually choose the artifact before I choose the equipment because they usually kind of go hand in hand. So for Charles, I was like, okay, Elder Sword. Now it's pretty standard for Charles. Like there's some units that are like for Karen, you're gonna be putting Lucio, like the Thief artifact. For Charles, you're gonna be putting Elder Sword. There's almost no case where you wouldn't unless you're using him as an attack buffer. So that's a part that you have to think about. For me, I want him to be strictly for defense and for countering Seaside Bellonas and RTA. But if for you really like his AoE attack and you want him to go fast and give you attack buff, Elder Sword might not be the right option. You might have to put like Exorcist Tonfa because you're like, okay, Charles will go first. He'll do more damage if I give him this, like let's say you want to make him do more damage going first. You come in, you're like, okay, I want him to do more damage, so you slap on Exorcist Tonfa. So now you have a character that's a really strong AoE that you can also do a lot of damage, and then you might even decide to give him speed so he can go first. So first off, picking the artifact, you have to know what you're going to be using the character on. For me, my Charles, it was to counter Seaside Bellonas and RTA, and to be able to put him on defense, get some defense Ws, scare some people off with just having Charles in there already does the job, but being able to win some of them by having Charles in there. The next thing I thought of, like, okay, what do I want from him? Some characters have exclusive. For Charles, he did have an exclusive. I wanted him to be proccing his skill 2 as much as possible. Again, if you want to be doing other things, like the ultimate, if you want to have the ultimate to be stronger, you can use the ultimate. That's up to you, what you want to use. Now, the more important part is the set. So that is the hardest thing that people struggle with the most, is picking the set. People are like, what set? And right off the bat, biggest thing is for the side set. I usually start with side set before I do main set, just because sometimes I'm trying to think what goes better. And I picked the immunity set. So the reason for that is because my thought was, okay, I'm not going to be using Charles as a buffer. I'm going to be using to counter Seaside Bellona. Seaside Bellona can proc her AoE skill like in defense break. I don't want that to happen to me. If they're able to outspeed my defense, I don't want to get defense broken. I need my Charles to live for as long as possible. And I'm not going to run someone that clears buffs or debuffs to be able to counter in, like someone that can cut in and clear debuff, like if you're running Destina. So I knew that coming in. So I was like, okay, I know I need this set if I don't want to get destroyed by Seaside Bellona. I want to have a chance to be able to resist it. I still lose to to Basar, but I'll build my team to be able to beat Basar. And that's the big thing. You have to think of where you're using the unit, what team you're using. You can't just slap on equipment on a unit and be like, oh yeah, this unit looks good, and not have a team behind it, because then your unit, even though they could be god tier, like I've seen some Charles that are like god tier built, but people put him with like all tanks, and I'm like, where's the damage? Just go straight for the Charles and they're done. They can't do anything. So that's why it's important to think of your team. So I went with the immunity set. I was like, okay, I know I need him to survive, put on an immunity. And then the last set, the big set, so counter set would have been ideal for me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not super happy with the set. It works for me right now, but I really wish it was a counter set. I wish I could get those stats. But the truth of the matter is, my Charles was hitting like a wet noodle with the counter set. He was not doing any damage, and that's just me not having grinded enough. I didn't get enough lucky pulls, and I didn't want to take it off my Apocalypse Robbie. So I was like, okay, I want him to do more damage. So crit damage set, I know I want him to have high crit rate. The rolls didn't go the way I wanted to, but overall, I'm pretty happy with them. So I picked the crit damage set because that would boost it up by, 40%? So that's really solid damage that you're getting from that. And I knew that from that set, there was enough good substats that I was happy with. So the attack is not as high as I wanted to. Still could use some work. Primarily because of this artifact, it has 0 attack percentage. And that's the biggest problem with the set I have here right now. There's a lot of those that's like, I don't have the right set. Like for this one, I went all into defense, but my Charles does his job. He's there to tank, he's there to counterattack and do enough damage to be able to pick off stray units and almost one-shot squishy units. So that's what I want him to do. So I don't know if you guys are kind of getting the idea on what I'm doing to build. It's kind of like thinking, where do they go as a team? So let's look at another example. Another really highly debated unit that everyone will tell you something different, how to build differently, and everyone has different levels of builds on them, is Apocalypse Robbie. Apocalypse Robbie, again, one of the hardest units in this game to build. It did get a little bit easier. I haven't touched her since she got updated. That's why you still see my crit rate is above the 80% threshold. But let's just talk about it. So with Apocalypse Robbie, I tested out a little bit with some practice equipment. And I just, the artifact was probably the hardest part for me. But I realized, Apocalypse Robbie doesn't get that many turns because I didn't give her the speed set and her speed is not like super crazy. So I was like, okay, people are taking turns over her. What can I do? And I was like, okay, Hell Cutter gives you a lot of crit rate, a lot of attack, and it hits pretty freaking hard when it's set up properly. So that's why I chose this. Crimson Seed. Honestly, I think I might switch my Apocalypse Robbie to Crimson Seed because now I find myself using Apocalypse Robbie as a tank. So in a team where there is no sustain, or in a team where she's taking a lot of hits. So I'm realizing, okay, Hell Cutter maybe not be for me. I think I might need Crimson Seed because I don't want to put immunity on her. I want to make her as tanky as possible with another set. So I want Crimson Seed to be able to remove the debuff. So I will probably switch this, but that's how you have to think when you're theory crafting, when you're building your units. Where are you using them? What is your use? What is the team you're using them with? With Apocalypse Robbie, I'll often use it with this Tina. That's why right now Hell Cutter still works, but I want to use her with like Seaside Bellona and Lilius and just have her be frontline for Guild Wars. Or for PvE or for real-time arena, I want him to be there. I don't want her to get destroyed with debuffs like with Seaside Bellona. I don't want to have to bring a healer a lot of the times. So that's why I might change it. So once you realize where you're using them, again, I'm going to emphasize it all the time. What team are you going to be using them with? And what do you want their role to be? And then the other thing for her, since I know she's going to be taking a lot of hits because she's my tank, I know I want her to counterattack. Warriors don't have access to Alber's Sword. So here, counter set is a must for me. I knew I needed to get counter set. Got some luck with some of the rolls, like have a lot of health here and there. Could change this artifact a lot. Like this one's probably the worst one that I have on her right now. And this one, like she hits like a wet noodle. And she doesn't need the crit rate anymore. So, but it's what I had. So I had to make it work. I will be updating her eventually when I start needing her more. And I have been using her a lot more. So I am going to be looking at her again. And then the side set, as I mentioned, I knew I wanted her to be a tank. So I gave her a health set. I knew I wanted her to be taking a lot of hits. I know her damage is based on health, so I wanted her to have such high freaking health that she's not going to be one shot. So that's why I was like, okay, I need health set. I need her to have insane amount of health so she can heal and she can just be in the fight the whole time. So again, not the best Apocalypse Robbie, but works for me really, really well for the teams I use her in and for the uses I have her. If y'all wanted to know some side builds for her, some people use her as like a speed bruiser, and they'll change this counter set for speed set, and they'll change, instead of Hell Cutter, I think they run Crimson Seed so she's able to take more turns. Or I think they run even like Exorcist Tonfa, and they run like a one-shot speed Apocalypse Robbie. It's kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, there is some really crazy Apocalypse Robbies out there. I prefer the slow tank bruiser, but you can make her fast. You can give her the speed set instead of the counter set. It just depends. People don't want her to be taking hits. They want her to be using her skill 3, be interrupting, be doing tons of damage. So up to you what you want to do. If you want her skill 3 to be more scary and to be like a reviver, if I want her to be a reviver that was really strong, I would probably change the counter set to critical hit damage set, and I would change the side set into a will set, because then I'm like, okay, she won't get debuffed. If my team for some reason gets wiped by a speed cleave, I can just come in, skill 3, kill their squishy, and bring back one of my units. So that's the thing you have to start thinking when you're thinking, what do I want to build? And last but not least, we're going to be talking about our healer, because it kind of it feeds into one of those that's like, you can do a lot of things, and this is going to be one that a lot of people may have in the backside, the Stina. So the Stina is slow. She's dummy slow. So when the first thing I need is like, hey, this skill 3 that she has, it clears all debuffs. And at the time I didn't have the DJ Bazaar, so I haven't updated my Destina. I'm still waiting for an equipment removal. But at the time I got her, I was like, okay, I need to be able to do this. This was the time that Bazaar and like Moonlight Aramintia were around, and like Dizzy. This was when Dizzy was everywhere. Y'all remember those times when Dizzy was like everywhere? So my team, I was running a slow cleave team at the time, and I knew my Destina needed to go first. So I was like, no matter what, even though she's slow and she has an amazing skill 3 that can just set up my team for success, I can just tank the Dizzy. So that was the thought process behind it. So my goal with it was to try to get pretty high effect resistance and pretty high speed. Speed was like number 1. And I was like, okay, if everything goes wrong, I might be able to still cheese a win with Wanderer's Potion Vial. Since she's fast, she'll be able to take turns. I should be able to cheese a win with Wanderer's Potion Vial. So that's why I put the artifact on her. I was like, okay, maybe she gets stunned by an off chance. I might be able to clear it. And then since I'm trying to make her fast, this will proc a lot. That way, even after she doesn't have the skill 3, she can still remove some debuffs. And then the rest was like speed. I knew I needed speed. And then I was like, okay, let's say they do have the Dizzy, or let's say they have the Moonlight Aramintia and no Dizzy. I still need her to do her ultimate. So I was like, okay, what can I do? Immunity set. That's literally what it comes down to. That's the side set. That's why I don't have her on health. If I somehow got her to be like 220, or if I decided to go for assistance, I would have changed this. But again, you have to know what team you're using your unit with, if that makes any sense to you. So to summarize, kind of like the guide on how to build your units, first thing you need to do when you get a unit, what do you want them to do? Damage? Do you want them to go first? Do you want them to go last? Do you want them to go in the middle? You have to know that. What team will you be using it with? If you just get a unit, and let's say, like, I have a couple units that I just slap on equipment on, and then I end up modifying it. One of those units, it's like my Dizzy. Oh my god, I've done so much with my Dizzy. But right now, like, where is she? Vivian. I legit just got slapped equipment on her. I have no purpose for her. I don't know where I want to use her. I just did it for Roll the Boss. But for an example, first thing you need to do, decide. Because I didn't decide for her. So her stats are all over the place. I can't use her for PvP. She's not fast enough to be a buff setter. And she doesn't have the damage to be a cleave. So it's like, she's useless. I'm not going to use her, and she'll never see play. Or if it's PvE, okay, what is she bringing to the table for PvE? She's just fast. Is she killing anything? Can she kill the Banshee? I don't know. I didn't test it. I just slapped on some equipment and hope for the best. You can't do that, y'all. Unless you're doing it for Golem or for like play setter, don't do that. Know what team you're using them on. If you don't know, figure it out. Decide what is going to be. I'm telling y'all, if y'all follow those 3 steps of what are they going to do, where am I using them, and what's going to help me. If you can answer those 3 questions, y'all will know how to build every single unit in Epic 7. Y'all will never have to ask for any other guide. That is all I have for you guys today, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.